You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of truth. A dimension of freedom. A dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the Capitalist Corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the Capitalist Corner.
Welcome to the special episode of the Capitalist Corner. I'm your host, Michael Leibowitz, enjoying my 3 p.m. cup of coffee here. It's my fourth of the day. I guess Tom is having one as well. We have a special episode today because my guest today is running for town council in my hometown of Wethersfield. But not only is he running for town council in my hometown of Wethersfield, but interestingly enough, I've known Tom for, I think, 40 years now. Because Tom was a cop in the town I grew up in. Tom used to chase my friends and me around town. But he also was one of the cops. Whenever I talk about police, I try to be fair because there were some real pricks, I'll be honest, when I was a kid. But a lot of the cops tried to help me, and Tom was one of them who really, went out of his way to be a nice guy, tried to give me inspiration, talk to me. Didn't take, but he tried. Years later, he was there to speak for me when it was time for me to try to get out of prison. When I got out, when I needed money, he lent it to me. He's given me a job. He's really a great guy. So you could just throw my objectivity out the window here because I am clearly biased. I want Tom to win. I think he's an honest guy. Tom, just welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Michael. Like I said before, I love being on your show. Let's be a little transparent, though, when we talk about me helping you. Yes, you reached out to me through your radio show, and you talked about the good police and the bad police, and people reached out to me and said, "You remember this kid, Mike Leibowitz?" I go, "Oh," and I'll tell you honestly, I said, "Oh, little Mike Leibowitz." I actually I saw so much in him, and he went to jail. And they said, "Well, he's talking about you. He's on the radio," and that's how you and I connected. And I do feel, I know you don't. I feel like you deserved everything you got. We talked about that, but I do feel like I put a lot of people away in my life that I truly believe that needed to be away. The government or the state or whoever, the bullshit. You did your time, and anybody looks at you any other way. And yes, you work with me, and you have more integrity than anybody else I've ever worked with. So that's just my take.
Thank you, sir.
You got it.
So what was it like being a cop?
As we spoke a million times, I never really wanted to be a cop. I sort of grew up like you did, a single mom. And my mom raised 5 of us. I was the youngest. My brothers and sisters definitely had it harder than I did. They were put into foster care several times because my mom couldn't handle it, the project living and stuff like that. But I don't define myself, I never have, on that. I think I've always gotten one step up and tried to get more step up. My kids, I have 2 beautiful boys, 31 and 35, and my 35 is running with me for council. But being a cop, it was different. It was a hustle. Because you have to get to be able to talk to the top level people and the bottom feeders of society. And I was comfortable with all of them. So being a cop for me was a calling. I never wanted to be a cop, like I said, but it was a calling. And,
Tom, it's interesting because people that know my story, I often talk about, growing up, and I wanted to be this tough guy. And one of the reasons I wanted to be a tough guy is because of the reputation that my father had.
Mm-hmm.
When the cops would get called to my father, a bunch of, the multiple cruisers would have to come and whatnot. And you're one of the people that knows, who lived it. You were there, through all this. But what I find interesting with people like you, because you didn't grow up much differently than when I grew up, right? No. And yet I went left and you went right. How did you initially just make the decision that you wanted better for yourself, that you wanted different?
I thought about that a lot of times, and I'm glad you asked it. I think I had, my mom gave me that Irish guilt. Don't make me look bad. I worked so hard to get where I'm at. be good. Even the first couple times I got arrested as a kid, it was, I was more afraid of my mom than I was the police. And I think that's a good way to phrase it, that, I had an older brother that went into the military during, the conflict that I think he went in 1969 or 1970. So the Vietnam War was wrapping up, and my sisters were older than I. They were all married by that time when he went in, or close to being married. And so it was my mom and I do remember like my birthdays being on Friday, and I never could figure out why Friday was. Well, payday was Friday. So even though my birthday was on Tuesday, sometimes my birthday was on Friday. And, you look back at that now, and those were all good learning experiences that, we're okay. If we can get up in the morning and we got some water, we got some food, and we got, we're halfway decent warm, or cool, we're good. So yeah, I had a different upbringing, and I think my mom had a lot to do with it. She was in the Marine Corps during World War II, so she wasn't any kind of baby toward us. But even when I got older, probably the age I was chasing you around, when she'd hit me, I sort of put my head down and just laugh, and then we'd laugh because she'd be whacking me more, and I'd be, she's not laughing, are you? Yes, I'm laughing, So I have a lot of respect for my mom.
So you were, like I said, you were the youth officer, which meant that you dealt with the troubled kids in town, which was largely me and my friends. I mean, Wethersfield is a relatively well-off town, but we do have a project, and that's where we were. And so that's where most of the trouble happened. But I'm curious to know what kind of skills led you to be effective at not only being a cop, but being a cop that dealt with the juvenile delinquents.
But I understood them. So just like you want to be a tough guy, you learn that from your dad. You learn certain things, and I really wasn't a juvenile delinquent. But did I get in trouble? Absolutely. And you guys were responsible for most of the car breaks within a mile of the project, all of you guys. And it was real simple when you got a car break or you got something stolen to go right to and one of you guys would always go, "I'm not ratting," and point to somebody else. So that's really how it, so I think because I understood you guys, and I had a passion to try to help to get better, because even at that time, Mike, think about it, I was in my late 20s, early 30s.
And you had that kick-ass mustache back then.
Yeah, it was. I had a lot of hair too. Yeah.
So you were always good at communicating with us. And the story I like to tell people, because it's stuck in my head all these years, there was a dance at the Wethersfield Community Center. And I showed up at the dance, and I was drunk and high. I think I was 15, maybe 16. You pulled me aside, you patted me down, and then you said, "Look, Mike, I wasn't even going to bust you. If you had anything on you, I was just going to take it." And you said to me, "I knew your father when he was a kid." And you said your father was smart, he was a good guy, but he had low self-esteem. And the low self-esteem led him to use drugs. And it ruined his whole life, and subsequently, helped basically to ruin mine. And it's such a impactful thing to me, Tom, because years later, as I started to study psychology and study self-esteem, I learned just how right you were. Whereas as a teenager, I didn't understand it. But as an adult, somebody who was working on improving myself, I came to understand that I needed to learn to feel better about myself. But you just did a very good job at communicating that. Did you ever take classes on communication, or was it just a natural talent or skill that you had?
So no, I never took classes. I didn't go back to college until I was 59 years old. I went back and got my degree because I really wanted to help police officers with PTSD or troubled with wanting to commit suicide. So I'm sort of went down that road. But I think my communication skill comes from just like you, from the street, learning different, figuring out how to read somebody. And when I was a cop, after I became a detective, I went through some of those interview and interrogation schools and looking for cues. But back then it was really just a a compassion, a passion for helping not only kids, not only, but I was one of the first DARE officers, and we talked about that, in the DARE school, of really talking about their self-esteem, because self-esteem is the biggest, probably for adults too, is probably one of the biggest detriments to us. When your self-esteem is down, you could do shitty things to yourself.
What does DARE stand for? Just so people
Drug
know.
Abuse Resistance Education. So you're educating them how to resist peer pressures, how to resist drugs, how to resist, because you get introduced to drugs by your friends. There's that, I think when I was younger, everybody smoked cigarettes, right? That was the thing. Everybody smoked cigarettes. And my mom, my dad died of it. And my sisters, everybody smoked. I just didn't like it. I never liked it. So I never smoked cigarettes. So that was just me. I took my own direction, even though back then, 6th, 7th grade, some of these hot looking chicks were smoking cigarettes. I want to get in with them. I put one in my mouth going, this sucks, So I just never got into that. And just going back a second, I had a girl that 6th, 7th grade, I had a crush on this girl. And I really, even in high school, I had a crush on this girl. And her name was Lisa. I don't want to use her last name. And she got into drugs pretty hard. She went to prison several times, prostitution, everything. And when I was doing a drug bust on the Rolling Turnpike, she was part of that drug bust. And it was really disheartening. It was so disheartening for me to see it, and she went off on me, and she's telling my bosses that she banged me and all this stuff. And that, I really, to be honest with you, I wanted that all in high school. But at that point, I had some empathy for her. And she called me like 2 years later, and she was clean and sober.
That's great.
She was so excited that she wanted to come in and talk to my DARE kids, because I was doing DARE at elementary, middle school, and high school. So I was in all the schools all the time. And I just said, no, Lisa, I can't do that. And she said, why? I'm clean and sober. I said, because you look fantastic right now. And I look at you 2 or 3 years ago, and you were an alley cat. You looked like you were ready to die. Kids don't understand that. They don't see that your self-esteem was that low and you let yourself go that high. Now your self-esteem is high. And I used to do a thing with a balloon and show them how to build up self-esteem. Somebody gives you a compliment, I blow up the balloon, it goes up a little bit. And then somebody makes fun of you, and it goes down a little bit. I showed that that's what self-esteem is, and that made me think of her just now. And she did. She passed away. She relapsed to it. She passed away a couple years ago. And I found out, man, it just hurt, because I felt like maybe I should have done more, but it's a choice, I guess, So
even before you became a cop, you met your high school sweetheart. Tell us a little bit about that and how that turned out.
So my wife is Jackie. We've been together 45 years. She was 16, I was 18. I was working at a package store at 18 years old. I was working full time in high school. I had 45 hours a week in high school. And I started living with my sister, and then I got my own place. My brother owned a 2-family. I rented from him. And she walked in the package store. We talked a little bit, and then the Ramada Inn on Southstein Highway, it was Martin Luther King. We were off from school, and everybody was going to the Smugglers Inn. We went to Ramada Inn because it was packed, and she got in. She must have had a fake ID. We never really even talked about that. And I was supposed to meet her friend, who had a little bit, I was attracted to her friend. I didn't really know Jackie. And I danced with her, we talked, and then she came into the package store, and I just assumed she was 18. And we went on the first date, and from that on, we never let go of each other. I mean, look, it hasn't been easy. She's definitely wanted to kill me. I definitely wanted to kill her. So.
Yeah, marriage requires work.
Yeah, it's 100% it does. And there hasn't been all good times, but you have to we always focus on bad times. And I want to say there's hopefully there's better times ahead, always.
So you were a cop for over 20 years.
Yep.
And then you retire from the force. And yeah, I guess you could have just went home and went fishing and enjoyed your pension, but you didn't. So what did you do once you retired from the force?
Well, I was 42 years old. I felt like I still had so much more to do. I went into a hardware company dealing with new construction with door locks and indoors and stuff like that. My friend owned the company and really promoted me fast. I was making really good money. Plus I had the pension, which back 20 years ago was good, and I had full medical. The pension doesn't go up from 20 years ago. So think about making your same wage 20 years ago as it is now. So you continue to work, try to make investments, stuff like that. Look, by no means am I rich, but I do feel like I'm a millionaire because I do have a lot of friends and a lot of people like you. I'll just say I did really, really well with building my people base. So I got back into trying to this politics stuff is really more of just trying to right some wrongs in town. I mean, our taxes are out of control. There's a lot of things out of control. And look, I might not be able to make a difference. And sometimes I think I'll lay in bed at night and go, why am I doing this? Like you just said, why not just go fishing? You know, but I'm not done yet. I feel like I could still have time to give back.
So you were also a school resource officer. You've done real estate. I'm curious as to when you think about all the skills that you've accumulated, both from personal experience, from working on the force, from being a school resource officer, dealing in real estate, what or how do you think that your skills have prepared you to work in politics?
Well, I don't know what politics are, right? So it's easy to say, yeah, I would understand that if it was a step one and you go to step three. You know, in our country, you could run for senator and you might get in right off the first bat and you're making decisions for everybody, right? I don't have any aspirations to be any higher than helping out our town for a little while. And what prepares me for that is seeing all walks of life in good, bad, or indifferent that most people don't see. You know, the average person sees about 4 critical incidents in their life. So that means a car accident or a death in the family in front of them or something tragic. Well, a cop could see about 200. So you see the good and the bad side of it. You know, was there a good side to your dad? Absolutely there was. You know, but the cops saw the bad side because that's when they were called. You know, when I saw your dad walking around for whatever, and he wasn't the typical badass, he was intelligent. He could speak well. You know, it's when he got angry or drunk or whatever is when things go bad. So I think being prepared for politics. I am a sensitive guy. I hate to say that, but I am a sensitive guy. I take things in, but I'm getting better and better at, you know, letting it fall off my back. And I think that's where I want to listen. I want to help, but I also are not going to take any bullshit from people. So
now you're running as an unaffiliated Republican, and everybody is aware of all the vitriol in politics on a national level. I'd imagine that it's not great even at a local level. How do you hope to work with Democrats? And are you willing, I should say, even to work with Democrats to get the type of things done that you want to get done?
absolutely. Like I honestly believe that a D or an R, so a Democrat or Republican in a town council shouldn't mean anything. We're here for the people. We're here to keep our taxes in stable, right? So that we can live in prosperous, right? We don't want to just be paying our taxes just to live here in town. Our schools are really important. New schools don't necessarily make great students, right? So we need really good teachers. They need to be incentivized and paid and want to be there. I think that's important. I think unions have a lot to do with why it's not. I'm a union guy. I was always in the union, but I think sometimes unions hold teachers back, even the bad ones, just like police officers, right? So I think I truly believe that being in a small town like this, you should be able to go forward without the D or an R next to your name. We should be able to collaborate and figure out what's best for town, not what's best for the Democrats or the Republicans. So that's where I stand, and I'll stay there.
What are, I don't know, 1, 2, maybe 3 issues that you think are important in town, and how are you going to address them?
So I think the one, or we just talked about taxes. I can't do a lot about the taxes. The party that's in right now really pushed our taxes, stretched it out over a 2-3 year period. So it's going to go up quite a bit with the new school, with probably $80 to $100 million on basically a loan that we're going to have to pay back. It's going to be more taxes, right? So without getting in looking at each department to see where we can save money, not necessarily cut money, and getting rid of a $50,000, $60,000 a year person doesn't save our taxes. What solves our taxes is going into businesses and growing businesses, bringing new business, get rid of some zoning laws and zoning rules so that people can expand their businesses instead of saying, well, not in my backyard. I think that's important, and people really should understand that by growing businesses, maybe that'll bring our tax base down so that we can live here. So that's wicked important to me. The other thing is I'm such a pro police officer because it gave me everything that I have. So when people talk down about police, we did have some controversy in town that went all around the world with the gay pride flag and the thin blue line flag, and people sat on their eggs there saying no, thin blue line is a terrorist organization, and they had time to fall back, to say, I'm sorry, that's not what it was, and they didn't. And I'm not opposed to either one of them, but the flag policy in town that was put into effect was the American flag, the state flag, the town flag, and they did have the POW flag. And I did ask, I said, okay, why do we have that? They said, without them, we don't have that American flag. So I totally get it. So getting everybody else's flag in, put them around town, put them where you want them in your, your houses, wherever. I'm not opposed to any of that. I just believe that we made our police officers feel, and I know that the current mayor goes in and speaks with them, all that stuff, but I really believe more should be done to help police, the fire department, we have a volunteer ambulance association that's been around about 70 years. And I guess the town manager or the town went after them to get rid of them because they needed to be a certain level and it would cost so much money to get everybody at a certain level. Well, come to find out, they spent over $1 million fighting to get rid of a volunteer ambulance association. That just, I don't know the whole, I'm going by what I'm told by both sides. But I just think that's crazy. So money's being spent that could be spent on senior citizens. The community center needs to upgrading so bad. When a senior citizen comes up to me and says, well, I love the senior citizen, I love going to see my friends, but I don't drink a lot of water or coffee. And I'm saying, why? Well, the toilets are from the second graders at the school. I can't sit down on it, I can't get up. So those are the kind of things I want to look into and try to help our community. And again, going back to the police, I want them to feel that we are a community, a police community, and more volunteerism is important within our community.
So you talk about, upgrading the community center, but that costs money.
Absolutely.
And the taxes, you're maxed out, so you can't get it from there. Would you be willing to go through, and I don't expect you to be able to do it now, obviously, to tell me because you haven't seen the insides of these things, but if you're elected, would you be willing to look through the various departments, see where they're wasting money, overspending on things, maybe even if there's corruption in there? I mean, I don't know. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but it could be. Would you be willing to go through the various departments and cut unnecessary spending so that there would be money available for things like the community center?
So I don't know that that's in my purview, even if I'm the mayor, right? But you do have access to it, and they do give you a budget every year that you have to make sure, if you're going to be a councilman or the mayor, to really go line by line. You really need to study that. And you have to look, I have a lot of people that are friends in management in our town. They've been on a long time and I know them and I trust them. That doesn't mean that I can't question them and look at and say, where could we cut this? But in reality, as I said, even if you make a lot of those cuts, that doesn't change our tax base, I'm at probably $10,000 taxes a year now. when I moved in here 20 years ago, it was $4,500. What's it going to be in 10 years from now? So I have no problem going against corruption on any level. I have no problem sticking my nose in somewhere it doesn't belong. But I also understand that I have to stay in my purview as a volunteer councilman to help our community.
Now, you talked about the volunteer fire department, and I know there's some issues going on there. Tell us about the issues, and also tell about the idea that you have to try to incentivize people to join the volunteer fire department.
The problem in the fire department, what I hear, is they just can't get volunteers. They don't have enough volunteers. When I first got on in 1984, I think, and the fire department, everybody wanted to join. It was that we're the oldest. I think we're the oldest continuous fire department, or one of the oldest continuous fire departments in the country. The first volunteer. So we need volunteers, right? And I don't know that they're not reaching the right people with it. That's how I think, and I came up with an idea. I don't even know if it could be done, but I know they get a little stipend every year, right? So $1,000, $2,000 to maybe you get a little bit more as you've been on, but I think you get them and training for a fire department now. When I look into it, there's a lot of training to become a volunteer fireman. Back in the day, they handed you a coat and a hat and go and, use a hose, right? Now there's all sorts of hazmat and the tanks and all that stuff. So there's a lot of training and it costs money. But I do believe if we say, if you've been on for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, that we take taxes off their property, serious taxes. And after 20 years, you put 20 years in and you didn't get paid, maybe your taxes are, up a quarter, I'd say a half off. Because it really doesn't cost, when you start figuring out what a paid fire department would cost compared to volunteer fire department, because how many fire calls do we get? That's the other thing I'd have to look at. How many fire calls do we get per day, per week, per month, per year, right? So I think if we did some sort of giving them what they deserve, where our firemen are just as good as our policemen. They care. They want it done, and it takes a special breed to go into a fire, to a house that's on fire with a hose, volunteering. They're not getting paid for it. So I do believe that, yes, do something like that. I'd like to look at that and get on, maybe start a committee for all of it. I'd love to do something like that.
Tom, what do you do for fun?
So I think my wife is my fun. So we like to do stuff together. I do have a lot of friends. I still have a lot of police friends that I see quite often. I still see Mark Mealy. If you remember Mark Mealy, I still see Mike Connolly, who's now assistant chief over in East Hartford. Kevin Dillon, if you remember Kevin, because that was one of the other guys you said was a great cop. He's also training police officers across the country. He's done really well. But we try to get together for dinners, for some wine and we talk about the old stories. My wife and I try to work out together. We try to go out. We're big foodies, so we try different restaurants. Her birthday was last Friday, and she went to the casino to see a concert. So we went to Italy last year. We got a couple of vacations this year planned. Family is really important to me, and Sunday dinners are really important. So I still have my sons come over with their wife and girlfriends and stuff like that. So that's my fun.
Hey, we always thought or heard that Kevin Dillon was very knowledgeable in martial arts. Was that true?
Absolutely. So when I was first on the police department, I was teaching at East West Karate, and Kevin came over there. Kevin was a different style of karate, and Kevin excelled. He stayed with it. I could get into. I tell you a story off about Kev. You'll laugh your ass off. But he got into it. Got his black belt. Got his even a higher level, and he started policecombat.com. So when I was running Hartford School Security, he would train my 100 guys on really how to escort bad people, even students, without hurting them. So, and you start punching kids, it's going to be on video and stuff like that. But I'll tell you, some of the kids were some big kids and wanted to fight you. And Kevin did a good job with that. Mark Neely does special investigation for the state of Connecticut. So we're all still somewhat involved in police work.
Before I let you go, what's something you'd like voters to know about you that I did not address?
I think you hit just about everything. I just want to make sure that or the people know, that I'm going to be able to be reached. I'm not going to be out of sight. I'd like to have a standing day, or some time that you could come out and tell me. People need to vent, right? So I can't tell you I could fix everything, but I can hear it, and I can pass it on to the right people. And that still happens to be every single day, from DARE students to, I still get people calling me every single day asking me a question about police work or about real estate or about stuff like that. So I'm available. I think all the candidates, I don't know the Democratic side. I know, like I said, I know the mayor. I know a couple other. Right now we have the retired fire chief, Richie Bailey, he's really good. We have Bree Timbrow, who her husband owned a church in town. She's wonderful. And we have Shelley Carbone, who comes from a great stock in town. So I'd like to see them continue with their work. My son is running with me, and we also have a defense attorney that's running, who I met, who's wonderful. And we have a really good shot. I just think if you're voting just because you're a Democrat, you're missing out on some really, really good people. And if you vote the Republicans, if you're voting just for a Republican, you're going to miss out. Really look at your candidates and try to talk to them, ask them questions. And I think that's important.
And you said that you're available to talk. Where can people find you?
So I'm on Instagram. You can look me up on Instagram. My name is Thomas Pentalow. So it's thomas.pentalow@gmail.com. And I do answer emails. So
awesome.
I'm here, and you know that, Mike.
And when's the election?
In beginning of November, and I'll be hitting it for the next 2 or 3 weeks. I'm going to be trying to get out to see as many people as I can. We're going to have some coffee talks where you could come and talk to the candidates. I've tried to hit every one of the town functions. I'm actually pouring beers at the carnival on a Saturday night to try to talk to people. So I'm getting out there just so that they could see me, that I'm not a politician.
Awesome. Well, Tom, good luck in the election. Thanks for coming on the show to talk about your candidacy. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
For now, the Capitalist Corner the special edition of the Capitalist Corner is coming to a close. Make sure to tune in. And if you're in Wethersfield, check out Tom Pentalow. Thanks a lot.